Greetings and salutations. I am Neverborn, the Abyss-That-Slumbers, and you are listening to The Eldritch God.
But I wanted to do this video, don't know how long or short it'll be because it's unscripted. But I wanted to talk once more about the concept of the skeptic community. It just keeps coming up over and over again, so I feel the need to sort of reiterate my position on the thing, as well as sort of explore and hopefully clarify some issues and questions that sort of surround the whole notion.
I found your video enjoyable, but I believe that you are making a mistake. You are approaching skepticism from a Platonic ideal. Not all skeptics subscribe to your notion. The Platonic ideal is just that, an ideal. Reality is cold, cruel, and messy. I'm a man who deals best with crisis. I'm at my best when everyone else is at their worst. He goes on to prove his point.
I've said that amidst all of the back and forth about whether or not we exist within a community, largely depends and hinges upon your definition of community. I'll reiterate my point now, which is that one does actually exist. It is not one which is comprised universally of friends or even like-minded people, necessarily, but more that in this sort of YouTube social media, venture everyone's getting into this, offering criticisms and insights and opinions on the news of the day as well as the goings-on YouTube itself, that concentric circles of people brought together either by just personal affection and friendship, or perhaps a genuine joy of arguing and debating between each other, have formed up and have formed into kind of solid groups. Now, does this mean that it is itself a monolith, that it's somehow unanimous in its thinking, and that it's single-minded in its advocacy? Absolutely not. In fact, many people who are sort of lumped into these circles, into this community, are people I don't even particularly like, and in many cases don't really agree with. Sometimes they are people I actually like and don't really agree with. And occasionally there are people who I just don't like, but am forced to agree with. Now, when we're considering skeptic and skepticism, now that we've all happily moved past the time in which we have to sort of check ourselves to make sure we're not cloning anyone and that we're falling in line with the right kind of skepticism, let's remember that this is really more of an action. It's really more of a mindset, a mentality, and a way of approaching issues and questions, rather than simply adopting a line that the skeptic community does, which is itself kind of hard to do given the disparate and different opinions on a given issue. We have this notion that questions and matters that we're faced with ought to be approached with doubt in mind, with a requirement that arguments be made, backed up by evidence, and shown to be true, beyond just the rhetorical capacity of those who are offering said arguments. This is why so many channels that are well-researched and those who really dig into the information oftentimes are so well regarded by many who are regarded in general as skeptics. We can take, for instance, Teal'c. Personally, I have found Teal'c to be something of a smarmy and arrogant cunt. He's easily unlikable by many people. Fortunately, I'm not trying to be friends with him, have no real desire to know him personally, but still find myself able to enjoy his videos within reason. This is, of course, when he's not just being a smarmy cunt about things, but the fact that he brings so much data to bear makes the arguments that he offers rather sound to my skeptical mind. Now, one YouTuber who I'm not a big fan of, Atheism is Unstoppable, doesn't really strike me as being quite skeptical as much as just evangelically atheist. He likes taking the piss out of people. He likes shitting on people. And with the ego the size that he has, he also likes positioning himself in a place of power to where, if you fuck with me, I'm gonna fuck with you even harder. Maybe it's the year of the docs or something like that. Now, do these people exist within the same sort of community as myself, for instance? Or perhaps let's say those who are my friends, Jeff Holiday, Spinosauruskin, even larger YouTubers like Kraut and T and Sargon. Yes, they do. And do they all get along? Maybe, maybe not. Yes, sometimes. No, sometimes. But this is also sort of the nature of what a community actually is. This is not to say it's the homogeneous glob of people who are all together in the same boat supporting one another unquestioningly because we're all on the same team. This is the mindset of imbeciles like Davis Arini. Is he in this community? To a certain degree, but he's also largely ostracized. He still, however, remains in certain concentric circles which are sort of clinging on to the outer rims of the spiraling galaxy that is our collective YouTube and blogosphere input on the events and issues of the day.
Now this is an interesting metaphor that I want you to keep in mind for later.
Now, all this being the case, what does this have to do with skepticism? Well, as I said, skepticism is really the act of approaching a question or idea with doubt in mind. And if you want to take it a step further, if you want to become, say, a rationalist or empiricist, as Gary Edwards likes to point out, and that's actually tending to become my preferred sort of mentality or philosophy when it comes to processing arguments and questions and information. But if you want to attack it from an empiricist point of view, then you need that hard data. Not simply to avoid being sort of on the fence or skeptical about a thing, but really getting that hard data in so that you can fully say that you understand and have taken a position that is rooted in fact and reality.
Now here we come to the verification of my thesis. Here, Wizard of Cause shows that he knows there are degrees of skepticism, and he seems to want to rise above the knee-jerk emotional-based skepticism to a platonic skepticism that deals only with hard data and real facts. Nothing is wrong with that in and of itself.
But when it comes to skepticism and the skeptisphere on YouTube, we do and have and will continue to see times in which those who are skeptical of certain things in one way or another let that skepticism perhaps sort of fall by the wayside as it happens to fit or work against perhaps their preferred visions and views and perspectives on.
But this is the problem I'm having. Wizard, you have a wonderful example of a galaxy of skeptics, each one orbiting and moving in different spiral arms closer to or further from the skeptic center. You acknowledge that the skeptic community has nuance and levels of skepticism. Then start to build your argument that your form of skepticism is the one true path and all others are corrupt. I will concede that there are points where you admit you have not achieved your platonic ideal and that you continue to strive towards it. My interpretation, mind you. But your video seems to be a subtle manipulation of people to move in the direction of your philosophy while ignoring the practical application of skepticism. Wizard of Cause appears to be making a case that the skeptic and the one who acts upon the skeptic's conclusions should be separate. To allow one to become involved in the subject of your skeptical observation is to become corrupted by the very topic of your investigation, and thus making it so you are unable to properly judge the topic of your investigation.
Things. Most recently, our good buddy Sargon. And I say this counting Sargon as a friend, but has been kind of letting his, I suppose you could say, skeptical mindset about things slip a bit.
And he goes on to provide proof of his position, and I would agree with you on this subject. However, Wizard of Cause, you seem to be a nihilist. I may be wrong in reading into this and your other videos. But either your online persona or your actual position is, the world is fucked, let's have a drink, and watch the world burn. Well, some of us don't think that way. We really want to put out the fire. We are willing to step down from our platonic ideals and lofty places of intellectual debate to actually attempt to correct the imbalances that we see in the world around us. You would sit in your place of superior skepticism and claim your superiority to our position, and you would actually be correct. I do not deny that removing oneself from the topic of skepticism would not result in a far better skeptical understanding of the objective truth of a certain situation. And after all, objective truth is an important goal. However, the survival of Western civilization is also a lofty goal. I frequently use the term World War meme to describe the current state of affairs, and while in some ways I'm joking, I also am not. This is why I use such terms. It is part and parcel of my philosophy, outlandish humor and hyperbole, with layers of hidden meaning. I cycle between making flat-out direct arguments then suddenly digress, taking an entire left turn into apparent nonsense, before, at the end of my little rant, suddenly bringing my irrelevant point back around to the original point and showing how it all interconnects. I find this methodology to work very well to break down barriers of the mind to new concepts. It would be a combination of stalling tactic as well as a method of debate. True, it is manipulative, and I do have an agenda. Sometimes it's to eat. Other times it's to convince you to put the knife down and not to kill anyone. You believe that the skeptic community has no obligation to directly help and should in effect act as a form of objective news. I don't entirely disagree that we need a new objective source of news in this world. I believe mainstream media is pretty much shot to hell. But I don't know if that is the role that every skeptic should be playing. Getting someone to doubt the voices in their head and to listen to you is just as important as convincing a feminist they should not torture their sons with their madness. You might want to have a skeptical analysis of feminism, but it seems like you wish to convince others to take the action to fix things. You want to make your judgment, then let others execute the solution. In an ideal world, that might be the best way to handle things. In reality, you may need to roll up your sleeves and jump into the fray.
In his now multi-year-long campaign and career, arguing against social justice warriors, arguing against political correctness, arguing against the social justice, feminist fascism that we see encroaching on us on all angles, he has sort of, in my opinion, slipped into a certain mindset which permits the omission of skeptical consideration of issues as it fits or does not fit his perspective.
I would agree to an extent. However, I think it's more that he has come to take certain points as fact and no longer worthy of doubt or debate. On my channel, I use 1488 and other alt-right symbols on a regular basis. Is this because I'm alt-right? Is this because I'm attempting to promote racism? No. Actually, if anything, it's to mock racists. I take the symbols of those I deem unworthy of respect and work to undermine the very concepts that they use to prop themselves up. Every time I use a racist meme in a fashion that makes people laugh, I'm taking a sledgehammer to those memes. I take the very concepts that support racism and I make a very small crack. I am a troll. I am also a skeptic. Sargon is a skeptic. Sargon is also a troll. Now, as a skeptic, I should not just attack the alt-right flat out. I should attack their concepts. I should seek to undermine if their concerns have any validity. I am not giving them a chance to defend themselves. I am using underhanded tactics to undermine the very foundations of their culture and beliefs. Sargon isn't a pure skeptic. Not anymore. He, like me, sees that the world is on the brink, and the time for theoretical debate has passed. The time for actual intervention is at hand, lest the need for more physical intervention comes to pass. I will give you an example. I am an atheist. I also currently support Christianity at every turn. Christianity, in my opinion, is the lesser of all evils. Christianity got rid of slavery and allows atheists to exist without killing them. Christians welcome open debate for the most part and are willing to hear me out. They may be difficult to change their minds, but at least I'm not being tossed off the top of a building. Yes, there are many problems with Christianity and many sins in the past, but that's irrelevant in the present. Given the current situation and the ongoing damage to Western civilization, the disintegration of the family unit, I frankly don't see a lot of better options. In fact, I don't see any better options. You will state later in your video that the enemy of my enemy is not always my friend. This is true, but they usually can be rather helpful allies. And as long as you understand the limitations of your alliance with the enemy of your enemy, you can usually turn that to your advantage. Perhaps they'll turn it to theirs. Perhaps you can both come to some sort of mutual understanding and beneficial end. You are, in my opinion, extremely cynical, and, as I stated before, nihilistic. So for you, that compromise isn't acceptable. I may be reading into that, but that's my position and observation.